You got to fight hard for these things sometimes. You got to do small steps and you got to do big steps. And you have to be prepared to do things that are uncomfortable for you and uncomfortable for the organization.
I'm Jack Newton, CEO of Clio, and this is the Daily Matters podcast. On Daily Matters, we talk with legal professionals, industry leaders, and subject matter experts about the future of law. We explore where the legal industry is headed, how legal practice is changing, and what you can be doing to position yourself for success. Today's guest is Ian Hu, an estates litigator at Carroll Hayde Chown LLP. Ian has spoken at more than 200 events across North America. He's involved with the ABA in multiple capacities, and he's the former vice president of the Federation of Asian Canadian Lawyers. Ian, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, it's great to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you on the show. Ian, before we get into a discussion of legal technology, I would love your perspective on what's going on with the world right now. There's obviously so much going on as it relates to race, especially with COVID-19 as a backdrop. You're someone who's very passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Yeah. And I'd love to hear your comments on how you think about those things against the backdrop of the world events that have occurred over the last few weeks and last few months.
Yeah, without question, I stand with the Black Lives Matter movement. Good for them. You know, it's about time.
Yep.
And it's something that's needed here in Canada as well. No question. It's painful to think about it and to watch it and to be an other. And it's wonderful, you know? I'm so happy that these guys are out there fighting for them and fighting for us.
Yeah.
Whatever headway they make is going to come and help society as a whole and help all of us who are other here in Canada and really the world.
And Ian, you made a comment about Canada, and I should point out that we're both. I'm from Vancouver, and you're in Toronto right now, I believe. And one of the comments I've heard over the last few weeks is Canadians commenting about the situation in the U.S. as if this is a U.S. specific problem, and I find myself reacting pretty viscerally to that because we've got a long-standing history of systemic racism in Canada, and we have our own populations, including our Indigenous populations, that have had the same kind of oppression that Black people have felt in the U.S. Yeah. And I feel, can you comment on that for a second, maybe both in the context of what you see, you know, in Canada vis-a-vis what's happening in the U.S. and what commonalities might exist and what differences might exist?
Yeah, well, I mean, we don't have the intense history of slavery that the U.S. has, but we have other forms, right? We have the Indigenous community. We have, just speaking for myself, the Asians. We had the Chinese who, you know, didn't have a lot of rights, were brought over here to build trains, to build train tracks. And that's it.
Yeah.
And it took a long time to get over all of those, just to get to a point where you have economic possibility and where you have the ability to vote, to buy houses, so on and so forth. And those, it could be argued that while those opportunities are available for everyone, the reality is there is an economic inequality between the others and the dominant culture here, and so it is difficult to make headway. It's difficult to progress and to live the Canadian life that everyone dreams about. If you are an other, it's a hard step to make.
And in the legal profession in particular, Ian, are you involved in any efforts in trying to change legal from a diversity and inclusion perspective? This is certainly a a profession that is not great when it comes to the raw stats around diversity and inclusion.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that and any ways you're involved in trying to drive change there?
Yeah, well, I've been with the Federation of Asian Canadian Lawyers for a long time, and I served in some leadership positions there. And I've been involved with the Roundtable of Diversity Associations here in Ontario, which is called RODA. I've given lots of presentations on EDI to lawyers. But I'm going to say it's the little things. Every small little thing that you do can result in some real change. So when I was in law firms, at law firms and some big companies and some smaller corporations and big corporations, you know, I get a phone call from a diverse lawyer who says, I put in an application. And then I ask, my superiors, oh, have you seen this person's application? And they say, oh yeah, this person who is a potential diverse hire was number 3. And so we're gonna interview the first 2, didn't make the cut. But because I put in a word for this person, they make the cut. And lo and behold, they get hired, right? It's those little things that you see that you have to put a word in when the opportunity arises. When Osgoode Hall, there was a very recent, I think it was last year, Osgoode Hall, which is the Court of Appeal here in Ontario, has huge change rooms for male barristers and a much smaller one for female barristers. And on Twitter, or what we call law Twitter, which is just a bunch of lawyers tweeting around. And here in Ontario, the female lawyers were tweeting out like, what's going on? We've heard there's a huge male barristers lounge. What does it look like? So I go down there and I take photos, and a picture says 1,000 words, right? And these photos make it clear that it's very, very nice, quite lavish. You've got huge windows. You've got couches. It's a high class men's club changing room.
Yeah.
And it was because of that that storm that came about that Osgoode Hall decided, yeah, we're gonna have co-ed change rooms, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know that when I'm taking pictures and I walk over there, right? I don't know when I go and talk to my superiors about a diverse hire that they're going to hire this person. I don't know that any of these little things are going to create change, but sometimes they do. So when the opportunity arises, take it. You got to fight hard for these things sometimes. You got to do small steps and you got to do big steps. And you have to be prepared to do things that are uncomfortable for you and uncomfortable for the organization. So I'm not saying everyone has to do that, but those are some of the things I've taken a lot of pride in.
When you talked about some of the ways individuals can take action, even if it puts them in an uncomfortable place, as you pointed out, sometimes those small actions can actually drive really, really huge change. When we're thinking about the system as a whole, when we're thinking about law firms and legal organizations and law schools, what can those institutions be doing differently to create a more equitable and inclusive environment?
Yeah, I have a quick answer for this. I have about 3 or 4 points. And I'm going to start with first of all, get rid of the diverse potluck lunch. That is not diversity. It is not diversity to sit around and eat food from all the different cultures. Okay? You want real change. So
and you mean this as some window dressing on, look, yes, we're inclusive, we're doing,
look at us,
celebrating
we got a party,
cultures,
eating food from diverse cultures.
Check off the box.
Yes.
We're diverse.
Yeah. No, you want real change, right? You look at your list of lawyers, you look at your list of staff, and you see what the diversity is there. And if they're not there, then if you're a law firm or a legal organization or a big company with a huge in-house department, hire diverse lawyers, number 1. Number 2, you have a preferred list. If you're an in-house group and you hire out, you retain counsel, you have a list of preferred counsel. Look at that list and tell me that that's diverse, you know? So that preferred list has to be diverse, because you provide, it's not just about who you hire, it's about who you use, right? Mm-hmm. 3, promotions. You got to promote diverse lawyers. Look at who are your managers, who are your supervisors, who are the directors. They have to be diverse. So promote your diverse lawyers. And finally, you got to put diverse lawyers on boards. You got to put them on the executive, right? How many companies and law firms do we look out there? And it's 10% or less, you know, not acceptable. And usually it's not even 10%, right?
Yeah.
And on a board,
no, that 10% is doing well, unfortunately, for some firms.
Yeah, that's 1 on a board of 10, right?
Yeah.
So those are the things you have to do. Once you get doing that, then we can talk about everything else. But these are the substantive changes that have to be made.
So maybe on point number 1, Ian, I'm curious if you have any recommended systems for improving diversity at a hiring level. There's a lot of strategies that organizations talk about, everything from thinking about quotas, either on the hiring side, or there's been some very interesting research around how you can change the makeup of the hiring pipeline. And depending on the ratios of folks you've got in the hiring pipeline, it actually influences what your hiring ratios end up being in a very nonlinear way. I'm curious what perspectives or recommendations you might have around it, actually setting yourself up for making more diverse hires in a more successful way.
Yeah. There's a couple, I have a couple of thoughts on this. Really only 2 points I want to say. One, quotas are great. I have no problems with quotas. Put those quotas in. There's nothing that says when you have a quota that it's permanent. You got to achieve change first. And having achieved change, get rid of your quotas. Do what you want. But first recognize that you're way below the bar, and you got to meet with the bar first. You got to go up to that standard first. And I think most law firms and legal organizations are way below the bar.
And not only that, if you get to that bar, I think there's also a lot of research that shows that it's easy to maintain or even grow that bar organically once you get to that point.
Exactly. And that's my second point, which is...
Sorry, I didn't mean to take that from you, by the way.
No, that was great, Jack. That's exactly right. I mean, this is about the culture. This is about every single staff there who says, oh, you have a job opening? My friend who's diverse, who is looking for this kind of job, I'm going to give that person a call. I'm going to talk to that person and say, this is the place you want to work at, right? Because I can tell you there are phone calls that go the opposite way, where people call, or diverse lawyers are looking at law firms or legal organizations, and they call someone they know, and the person in the organization says, don't join. There's no diversity here. Or join, but hey, eyes wide open here. Yeah, I want you to know what you're getting into, right? That's the culture. And not everyone sees that, right? And so you want to make change, you got to make culture change, which comes from the top, and which is an everyday, every person thing. Yeah.
Well, thanks for that, Ian. And let's make a dramatic shift of gears now. We're also going to talk about legal technology. And you describe yourself as a legal innovation evangelist. And I'd love to just hear what that means in your eyes. What does a legal technology evangelist look like? And what is a legal...
I just stole the evangelist word because that's what techies like to use, right?
They do, yeah. There's developer evangelists. There's you're spreading a message.
You're spreading a message, and I think what it means is you're a true believer. In my case, I believe that legal technology and modern legal practice, legal innovations, will change the face of law for the better. You have to believe that in order to be an evangelist, right? I believe that if legal tech is allowed to do what it can do and fills that space, there will be a lot of people who have access to justice, who can get their disputes resolved, who can get their wills written, who can figure everything out, and with an app and swipe left or swipe right,
Yeah.
And that's the power that is in legal tech. That's the power that's in legal innovation. It can help the people, and so that's what I believe.
Well, you know me, Ian, I'll say a big amen to that. And I'm curious what has your personal journey been in terms of maybe recognizing the power of legal technology, and what saw you converted into a legal technology fan and eventually evangelist?
Yeah, well, I've always been a tech guy. My dad was an engineer. I started as an engineer. My two brothers are engineers. One that spent a lot of time at places like Google and Facebook, and the other at places like Call of Duty and Activision and Amazon Go. So that's my family.
You've got a very technical family.
Yeah, and I'm the third child, right? Can do whatever I want, I guess. So I've been hitting bulletin board systems at 2400 baud since I was 12 years old.
I remember that.
Yeah. So I've long been a fan of tech, and so when I enter the legal space, it's obvious for anyone, and now having represented both plaintiff and defendants on both sides, it's obvious there are huge disadvantages for those who don't have knowledge, for those who don't have power, for those who don't have money. And I think somewhere there, technology can flatten that. Technology can give advantages to those who don't have the advantages. Technology can provide legal services for those that don't have it. I just think about like will writing, which is ripe for that I believe any app can probably do for 95% of wills. What a lot of wills lawyers do? You get the facts. You find out, a relevant fact, something that's different from the usual. Someone wants to implement a trust. You go into your wills book. You find the section that talks about the trust, and you copy and you paste that section in. Tell me an app can't do that, right? Let alone solving disputes. Already proven. eBay does it. Already proven now with Shannon Salter out there in BC, Jack, and in the tribunal.
I'm actually speaking to her later this afternoon.
Okay, there you go. Have her please say hi for me.
I will.
Yeah. So that's all of those are amazing things that the tech can do. And
so you point out correctly, I think, Ian, that legal of all professions maybe being as rule-based and precedent-driven as more than any other is ripe for the kinds of transformation, the kind of opportunities that technology presents. And yet we see a profession that many regard, correctly or incorrectly, as technology laggards or resistant to change. Can you speak about what your perspective on that is, and whether lawyers are truly slow to adopt technology, and if so, why?
Lawyers are unquestionably slow to adopt the technology. What's the widest use of technology for lawyers? Well, it's what you do, Jack, practice management software. That's their primary take on technology. Do they know what technology can do other than practice management software? Because it can do a lot, right?
Practice management software is kind of table stakes, right?
Yeah.
Like that's like saying an accountant uses an accounting system to run their books.
Yeah. How about software like what Ben Alari has at Blue Jay? It can tell you whether someone is an employee or an independent contractor, or tell you whether something fits under a legal concept, right? Or of course, Ross AI and so on, right? We can
Ross AI. We had Noah Weisberg from Kira on the show earlier.
Yeah. and you got and all of these opportunities are available. So, but
forget the fancy stuff too, by the way. Forget AI and all the fancy stuff. You mentioned document automation, stuff that's been around for 2 or 3 decades. It has so much opportunity for impact.
Yeah, I don't know what it is or why it is, right? But lawyers are stuck on precedent. And there's one more thing that lawyers really, really value, which I don't think the public values as much: accuracy. Lawyers want to be right. Lawyers want to get things so that it's just, so they want to get that law right. They want to get it perfect. They want to get all that case law and understand everything and assess that risk. I don't know if people want that. I think the public values access more than accuracy. It's more important that you can resolve that dispute for $10 with a swipe or whatever than it is to figure out that, oh, I'm going to pay $12,000 instead of $11,000 on this dispute, right?
Right.
They want access. The public needs to be able to get that, whereas lawyers are very, very hung up on trying to do the best possible job. Right?
Yeah, I think I've seen a lot of that myself, Ian, and I think part of it is maybe not even wanting to be accurate, but maybe not having a good instinct around where good enough is good enough. You know, where's that line, and kind of the law of diminishing returns does it work with legal work, where your will is probably good enough. Like you said, with that templated kind of automation system for 99% of wills, in the way that most wills will get executed, is probably good for 99% of those cases. So unless you've got some super high net worth individual with an ultra high stakes will, maybe you should optimize to making it accessible, to your point, over making it perfect, and figuring out where is that line of good enough for the masses. And then we can think about how do we increase access with that kind of a mindset.
Yeah, I articled at a Bay Street firm, and you often hear, I want you to uncover every rock.
Right. That's a very common saying. Yeah.
Is that our standard? You know? I don't know if the public needs that. Yeah.
So Ian, if we look at less the causal side of why the profession is slow to adopt new technologies, if we kind of look at the other side of the coin, and there's a lot of great innovation happening in legal, what are some of the biggest factors driving innovation in legal, and what are you excited about in regards to the innovation that's happening today?
Technology is much, much easier to use, and coding is easier than it used to be. So the more groups of coding you have, the more coding has you used to have to go into BASIC and code every single procedure. You don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Right? You can just buy a package and do what you want, right? You can create a chatbot by using another app. It's all out there. So
this whole emergence of these low code or no code tools that it's very exciting.
Yeah, and it goes right into the access versus accuracy. You don't have to have a very powerful program to hit the right needs. I don't think you need a very powerful program to write wills, for example, to write 99% of wills. So you just need good enough. And the technology is at that point where you don't have to be a genius to do good enough. You can probably do okay. And in fact, if you know how to design, if you have thoughts about design, you don't need to do the coding. You can hire coders to do that work. So technology is easier to use and easier to code. The second thing is demand. There's a big demand for it now. It all comes hand in hand, right? They understand now that this is possible. eBay has done it. This is possible. Shannon Salter's doing it. This is possible. And once you realize, there's Uber out in California. Why isn't there Uber in Toronto? Well, there will be. The demand is there now, right? People are understanding the demand is there now, and slowly understanding that good enough is good enough.
And what do you think at a macro level, Ian, we might see in terms of maybe forcing the firms that have been able to get away without being very innovative to finally start innovating on the way that they deliver legal services?
That's a tough question. Some of these firms, their clients are people or entities that require sophisticated legal services. So I often hear from such lawyers, I'm not going to lose my business, right? People are always going to need high-end services that technology cannot cater to. And that might be true for the next 2, 5, 10 years. But there will be a point when the technology gets good enough, and it will be able to tell you with a high degree of accuracy whether someone is an employee or an independent contractor. And to such a, and it's easy to think the pie in the sky, where is this all going to go, is easy to picture. Just imagine what's there now and times 1,000 for accuracy. And then you get to the point where it's like, well, why do I need to go to a lawyer when my app will tell me what the % chance is of something? And that's the risk, 67% risk. Well, I'm going to settle this at 67% risk. It's proven. And if you've got big data in there, your 10,000 cases is far more reliable than that one law firm's history of 1,000 cases.
Right.
So
we're seeing some very interesting early perspectives on what that could look like with the work that Joshua Browder is doing at Do Not Pay. We had Joshua on the show a few weeks ago, but again, if you want to automatically dispute your refusal for unemployment benefits, he can automate that entire process. You want to fight with the airlines about the fact they won't refund your airline ticket due to COVID-19, a completely automated process for that. You see where some of these forms of automation are going, and where some of the business and some of the demand for these services may go if lawyers don't figure out a way of addressing this need more efficiently and effectively.
Yeah, the big corporation is going to ask itself, we can hire lawyers, or we can provide services to our customers and have them sign that, have them agree, as they always have to, that all disputes will be figured out through my app. And boom, there goes everything your law firm did for the big client. Right?
So I'm curious, Ian, when you are out evangelizing for legal technology, and maybe you find a set of individuals or maybe an entire firm that you just can't convert to the new religion around technology, what are some of the factors that form barriers to legal technology adoption, or maybe to innovation in general? And what concerns you about those barriers?
Without question, one of the reasons why the change doesn't happen is because none of the lawyers in charge were educated or trained in legal technology.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get someone to make a huge change when they don't understand it and they don't believe in it. Maybe it takes a generation, which is what is happening right now with things like the Ryerson Legal Innovation Zone, where you have universities and law schools, and that's just in Canada. Also in the States, they've got them popping up in a bunch of law schools doing future of law, where they're training their lawyers. And so when those lawyers one day become in charge, what could be in 10, 20 years, then maybe that's when we start seeing a difference. Because then the people that I'm talking to, or that whoever is going to be me 20 years from now, they're speaking to a rapt audience, right? We're trying to pry open a jar that's been closed forever.
So do you really think it's waiting for that generational change to happen before we'll start to see the scales tip?
I'm a cynical lawyer. Deep down, I think that's what I believe, but I hope for better, and there are other barriers too, though. And maybe the biggest is the monopoly that lawyers have in virtually every jurisdiction in the world, which makes it so that only lawyers can give legal advice. So you cannot have an app that writes a will, because that's effectively giving legal advice, which is just ridiculous. One day, someone's going to create an app like Uber, you know, that's on the border, you know. Can you, you couldn't have, just like taxis were regulated. You're going to have an app that's so effective, so cheap, so easy to use, and so widely used that it's unstoppable. And then it's too late. It's too late. You've been taken over. So why not create a set of rules that allow for apps to do what they can do? Why not break down that monopoly and open a space for legal apps that says you can provide these services? So no one wants to step in that right now. Too risky.
Yeah, it's too bad. It seems just last week we learned of Washington State rolling back their triple LT program, and it feels like the small steps we make in that direction seem to be greeted by two steps backward at some point.
Well, self-interest is a hard thing to fight when you got a monopoly.
That's very true. Now, I'm interested on your perspective. I'm at least of the mindset that when we really embrace legal technology, we maximize our productivity as lawyers. We maybe even invite non-lawyers to help support the work that needs to be done. We layer in technologies and apps to help address the legal need that's out there. And the legal need is substantial. Well, we have the World Justice Project data telling us that 77% of legal issues that consumers experience went unaddressed by a lawyer. So there's what I describe as the tip of the iceberg that is the 23% of legal needs that are being met by lawyers today, and a vast market to be unlocked if we can properly leverage, I think, technologies and efficiency and automation and maybe non-lawyers to tap into that legal demand. But the story can be, we can make the pie bigger, and we can make the pie bigger for everyone, and we can have individual lawyers thriving and being more successful than they ever were if we can get a bit more innovative. And yet many legal professionals, and especially the regulators, seem to have a bit more of a fixed mindset that this is a zero-sum game, and that if we cede territory to apps or we cede territory to non-lawyers, we're endangering our livelihood, essentially. Can you speak to your perspective on that?
Yeah, I would love to see. I agree with you, Jack. I would love to see a model rules. I would love to see a model structure or framework where it can be shown that legal apps can coexist with legal services and be helpful for everybody. Be good for the greater good. Be good for the legal market, and really, when you think about it, how could it not be? Because it's such a huge percentage of unserved people. And whatever technology you come up with, it's not going to be perfect right now. It will require a lawyer to make sense of it and to use it, right? There are great apps right now, and they do require lawyers. So we're so early in the stage that the fear of being taken over is misplaced.
So Ian, let's talk a little bit about the COVID-19 crisis and the influence that is having on legal technology adoption. Just this week, CLIA will be publishing our second COVID-19 briefing on almost a state of the industry perspective on some of the impacts COVID-19 has had on the profession, some of the ways it's driving technology adoption. And I think the silver lining some of us are seeing in this crisis is that it does seem to be accelerating change and accelerating the adoption of at least some tools and technologies among lawyers and law firms. Can you speak to what you've seen on the ground and maybe what some of your hopes for ongoing impact might be?
Yeah. The thing that makes me happiest is the impatience from judges for lawyers that refuse to do video discoveries, remote mediations, and so on. There are some wonderful judgments out there Justice Myers, shout out to you. With phrases like "it's 2020," you know.
It's time to wake up.
It's time to get with it, and that impatience is shared by lawyers, and that impatience is what you need to get lasting change. You know, I work a substantial amount in insurance. We're seeing insurance companies have and all their lawyers work from home, right? We're seeing any lawyer that's capable of doing it working from home, and we're seeing lawyers that were prepared and are living in the Cayman Islands while they're practicing in Canada, you know,
Right.
and reaping the benefits. So it's not just avoidance of pain. It's going to the pleasure, and you're gonna see. I hope that all of this can be achieved. The frustration of not being able to practice the way we want to because the courts are so slow moving right now, along with the pleasure. So you've got both going right now, the carrot and the stick, and you got to hope that that's going to last.
Agree. So Ian, before we wrap up, I want to touch on the fact that you've started a very popular Facebook group about personal finance for lawyers. Can you speak a little bit about the importance of financial health and how important it's been for you, and a bit more about this group and what the discussion topics are?
Yeah, sure. This is near and dear to my heart because it made a huge difference in my life, right? It's called the Canadian Lawyers Personal Finance group on Facebook. So you just go to Facebook and you do a search and you can join it. We have 700 lawyers now. Basically, a lawyer, one or two members join every single day. And here's my story, right? I mean, I started off at law firms that were quite successful. And you walk in and virtually every car in the parking lot is a BMW. Everyone has their super nice suits. Everyone goes out on huge vacations and nights out and so on, and nice clothes, all the experiences and all the things. But you realize there's a great book, Millionaire Next Door, which says lawyers are among the worst savers relative to income, right? We want to spend and we want to look the part. And I want to say, you don't have to. You can be an amazing lawyer and not do any of that. And in fact, if you value freedom, the freedom to join any law firm you want, the freedom to write blog posts and voice your opinion, regardless of consequence, the freedom to say what you want and do what you want and take whatever risk you want to take. Well, if you are on the road to financial independence, or you feel secure in your ability to manage your finances, you have that freedom. If you have a bad day at work and you want to say, F this, I'm out of here, you can do it, right? It was Supreme Court Justice Binney. I heard him speak. He said, look, the great thing about being a lawyer is you can go out and start your own law firm at any time, right? It's true, but you're taking risks when you do that. But if you have that financial cushion sitting behind you, you have the power to do whatever you want. And we have a group that's sort of trying to get there.
And you mentioned this it sounded like a Canadian specific group, but this actually sounds like topics that would be relevant for a lawyer anywhere. And I'm sure, can you speak maybe a little bit about the tactics, and are these concepts that would apply equally well to a lawyer that might be listening outside of Canada? And if they want in, can they get in on this Facebook group if they happen to be non-Canadian?
Okay, so this Facebook group is only for Canadians. But if you are outside of Canada, and even if you're inside of Canada and you want to start your journey, right? You can download something that's like 15 pages, a 15-page PDF by Bernstein. It's called If You Can. Download this document, begin reading, and get yourself started.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you, Ian. And lastly, you're very active on social media. You're a regular columnist for Canada's largest legal blog. What are some of your tips for our audience members who are looking to grow their social media presence or their personal brand? That's something you've done very successfully, and would love to hear more about your journey and maybe some of the successes you've seen as a result of that investment.
Yeah, you got to start. You got to just start. So that's my number one tip here. Every entrepreneur knows. Anyone that starts anything knows. Take that first step. Let yourself make a fool of yourself. And if you have no followers for the first 6 months or a year or 2 years, so be it. At least you're doing it. And as you do it, as you do anything in life, you will get better and better and better at it. And you will improve, because it's as long as you're thoughtful about it, right? It helps to have an identity in a brand, to know what you are, or what kind of personality you want to deliver out there, right? And for me, I've grown into being comfortable with being myself on social media. But you don't have to do that, right? You can focus on delivering a certain kind of brand. There's lawyers out there that have a very strong equity, diversity, and inclusion slant who are very successful. There's lawyers out there who push their practices and very well, and they're successful. There's all kinds of ways to skin this cat, and you have no idea where you belong and what kind of way works until you do it. So you got to do it and let the ocean take you wherever the currents go.
And maybe one parting question just on that note, Ian, you talked about the fact you're able to show a little bit more of your personality, and something I see as a recurring theme in many conversations with lawyers is a propensity for maybe trying to dilute down their personality and especially outward facing and more permanent social media channels like Twitter. And yet on the flip side, I talk to many clients that actually gravitate toward lawyers that are demonstrating a bit more in the way of personality that they might feel like they resonate with more strongly for one reason or another. Can you speak about that at a high level and maybe any personal experiences you've had on that front?
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly gotten some referrals, interviews, opportunities to work with some cool legal tech apps through the fact that I have a social media presence, no question. And it's about putting forth a personality that speaks to you being a human being, to you having faults, to you not being a slick, ultra professional, ultra curated type thing. It goes back to when you try and sell something on eBay. If you're trying to sell something on eBay, yeah, you can make it look like it's a corporate store that you're selling, or you can just say, this is my bike that I've used for 15 years. And it's got a couple of problems here and here, but I think it runs well. I guarantee you're going to get a lot of bids there because they know it's another normal human being. Clients and people want to work with normal human beings, and that means being vulnerable. That means having opinions. That means being likable and not likable, and that's okay. That's okay.
Well, it's a great note to end on, and I think the idea that humans are looking to connect with other humans is more relevant in these times than ever. So on that note, thank you so much for joining us today, Ian. Really enjoyed our conversation that was admittedly wide-ranging, but really enjoyable, and stay healthy out there.
Thank you very much, Jack. It was amazing. And what you do at Clio is incredible. Keep it up.
Thanks for joining us on Daily Matters, a podcast from Clio. Rate and review wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Daily Matters is produced by Andrew Booth, Sam Rosenthal, and Derek Boland, and hosted by yours truly, Jack Newton. Thanks also to Clio, the world's leading cloud-based legal technology provider, for supporting this podcast.